Hey y'all, this is Moni.
And this is Kat.
AKA. And this is the Fake Ass Book Club. Wait, can we both say it or no?
What's up, you guys? It's your girl Moni.
Hey, Moni. This is Kat.
What up, though?
Not much.
That's what's up, guys. Welcome back to another fun and fantastic episode of your favorite podcast ever. We are excited to be back too. Oh my gosh.
I feel a little weird.
Why do you feel weird, friend?
Well, weirder than usual because we're recording in the daytime and I've
know.
gotten my circadian rhythms are off. So I feel weird.
I actually was thinking the same thing. Like I'm actually
Yeah.
borderline alert right now.
So,
Kind of.
so listeners, if this is like if we sound weird, that's why we're awake.
Okay, this is how it sounds, guys. And I wish that I could say that this means I won't be like messing up and doing stuff, but no, that happens no matter what time of day
Yeah.
on my end. So, you guys, without further ado, I am really excited to, if you can imagine, Kat, talk about this book today. Okay, we are going to be reading "All Boys Aren't Blue" by George M. Johnson. What a vibe! In a series of personal essays, prominent journalist and LGBTQIA plus activist, George M. Johnson explores his childhood, adolescence, and college years in New Jersey and Virginia. From the memories of getting his teeth knocked out by bullies at the age of 5, to flea marketing with his loving grandmother, to his first sexual relationship, this young adult memoir weaves together the trials and triumphs faced by Black queer boys. So, oh my gosh, that's a whole bunch. That's a lot.
That was.
Yeah.
This is an often banned book.
I know.
And I
It is.
can kind of not really though, because one of the like negative reviews on Amazon was that this is porn. And I was like, okay, that's a stretch, but we'll get there. But if you want to know a little bit about the author, George M. Johnson, he is an award-winning Black non-binary writer, author, and activist located in the New York City area. George has written for a major outlets and has multiple awards and nominations.
Very, very nice. And I'm glad that you mentioned that this was a banned book. This is actually what piqued our interest in this book. I had seen it before because technically this book, let's see, it was published April 28th of 2020. So this isn't like a brand new book or anything. So, but I had seen it and this just made me want to read it more. So thank you, banned book people, for putting this even more so on my radar because I think I mentioned this in our previous episode. He was tapped as like one of the presenters, like the ALA, the American Library Association does all of these fabulous, virtual events and stuff like that. And he was actually a part of a part of a lot of them. So, I had been seeing a lot of him and I'm thinking, let's go ahead and move this to the front of the list. I felt like we needed to talk
Yeah.
about this. So I'm really excited to talk about it. Like I mentioned, it was published April 28th of 2020. And let's see, it was about 304 pages long, is from what I can see here.
I stopped looking that information up.
Yeah, I just always put it on there.
It's
Yours
good
is
to
incorrect most
know.
of the time, so I can see how that would be disheartening for you.
Yeah, it wasn't helping anybody.
I mean, that could still technically be wrong,
But
but
it was a quick listen on the Audible
it was.
app.
What was it?
Like
About
it was just over 5 hours, and I sped it up since I may or may not have waited until the last minute.
Listen, almost doesn't count. You made it happen, friend.
Yeah.
So I'm with it. So you guys, before we jump into this book, let's do what we always do about this time. We are going to do a quick dedication, you guys. So hands over your hearts. As always, guys, we want to thank you for joining us once again, for all of your support. So to all of our listeners, as always. And I just thought, you know what, on a personal level, I wanted to sort of dedicate this to all of the misfits, all of the people coloring outside of the lines, all of the people pushing boundaries. Shout out to you. You know what I mean? You keep things interesting. What about you, friends?
Yes, and I love those people. My dedication this week is going out to the Netflix movie Intergalactic, ENTER Galactic. It's a Kid Cudi and Kenya Burris project, and The animation style, you talk about like drawing outside the lines. The animation style was so beautiful and so creative and such a loving tribute to comic books as well. It was very much in the vein of Into the Spider-Verse, and it was pretty much the highlight of my weekend watching it. So, and it was also a tribute to Virgil Abloh. It was released on his birthday,
Who is
and it
that?
was Virgil Abloh is a fashion icon who died not too long ago.
I've seen
Uh,
pictures of him. Okay, so see,
yeah,
comes full circle for me.
it's
Okay.
so much. We could do a whole
Aw.
episode on him and his work easily. I actually would like
Mm.
to read about him. I'm sure there's more to come. But anyway, that's my dedication, and it is now over.
Okay, excellent. All right, I like it. Very nice. That was a good dedication. And remind me about that because I'd like to put that on the list.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm so bad with names, man. Respectfully to
Okay.
you, sir. I
Sure,
mean, I
sure.
don't,
You
it's not
can't know
personal.
all the things and all the people. It's like
You
when
always
people
say
say
that.
sports people to me,
I mean,
and I'm
true.
like, I don't know who any sports people are, and I don't have to. I
Yeah,
don't
that's
feel
true.
bad about not knowing. It's not my job to know these things.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I guess not, but
was that gonna help you pay your
uh,
bills this month knowing
no, not
who No?
exactly. No,
No?
that's true.
No?
That's true.
Okay, well, then you are under no obligation to know who that is.
You know what that reminds me of? Something you said last week, how we're always grappling with our own ignorance, and that shit took me out. That's how I feel right now. I'm just grappling with it, friend, okay? I'm just trying to
It's fine.
accept it.
That's why communication is so important. That's why you learn things. Like, we all have something to share and teach and learn, so,
True, it's true, I'll give you that. I definitely will give you that. So you know what I was thinking? So, this book, I feel like almost all of our books, maybe we should do a better job of this, I don't know. But, like, just as far as, like, a trigger warning for folks, like,
Oh,
if you're just joining us,
yeah, if
you're
you're
not used
new.
to how candid some of our conversations can be in the content that we, kinda talk about. I do feel like it might be nice to do that. So I do wanna give you guys a trigger warning, and I actually thought a really cool way of doing it this time, instead of me saying it, I really liked the beginning part of the audiobook where the author, actually does an author's note. Yeah, so I'm just gonna play this clip, you guys, as the official trigger warning, so here it goes.
In writing this book, I wanted to be as authentic and truthful about my experience as possible. I wanted my story to be told in totality, the good, the bad, and the things I was always too afraid to talk about publicly. This meant going to places and discussing some subjects that are often kept away from teens for fear of them being too heavy. But the truth of the matter is, these things happened to me when I was a child, teenager, and young adult. So, as heavy as these subjects may be, it is necessary that they are not only told, but also heard by teens who may have to navigate many of these same experiences in their own lives. This book will touch on sexual assault, including molestation, loss of virginity, homophobia, racism, and anti Blackness. These discussions at times may be a bit graphic, but nonetheless, they are experiences that many hearing this book will encounter or have already encountered. And I want those listeners to be seen and heard in this audiobook. Within this audiobook, the word nigger or nigga appears, sometimes in full and sometimes abbreviated. The same is true for fag and faggot and their abbreviations. I included these slurs in the audiobook in specific ways for specific emotional and intellectual effect. Please use the same thoughtfulness when talking about this book. If you don't identify as Black, African American, or queer, don't use these slurs in full, which can be harmful to others. You can use common abbreviations like N-word or F-word instead. Please know that this book was crafted with care and love, but most importantly, to give a voice to so many from marginalized communities whose experiences have not yet been captured between the pages of a book. I hope this book will make you laugh at moments. I hope this book will make you cry at moments. I hope this book will open you up to understanding the people you may have never spoken to because of their differences from you. We are not as different as you think, and all our stories matter and deserve to be celebrated and told. With love, George M. Johnson.
Man, that was a nice reminder too of how good the cover art was.
Yo, so beautiful. I almost
Yeah.
wore a flower, like, I couldn't find it, like a little like a
Flower
crown
crown?
thing. Yes, cause just
Yeah.
a vibe, you guys. So, I don't know, like, for me, I just felt like that was a really beautiful way to start off this conversation in his own words with his own intentions kinda, like, in the forefront, and I do think that it's important when you're talking about stories like these that, you're having a conversation in a thoughtful way about them. and in the right context. And so I think that concept kind of exists no matter which banned books you're talking about, because a lot of times they are talking about subjects that people don't find easy to talk about. So without further ado, you guys, let's jump into it. Let's talk the inciting incident. And this happens when he's a young kid and he's talking about being with his older cousins, and they're walking home from school and they're confronted by these guys, this group of guys, and end up getting into a physical altercation, which leads to him getting his teeth kicked out of his face. Man, he was like 5 years old.
Yeah,
God
that
damn.
was rough.
I'm like, damn, okay, so here we are. Um, and I think what struck me about that was, well, a couple of things. I mean, first of all, he was extremely young, but also too, just having the protection of your family. Luckily he wasn't by himself, because he was like, I wasn't even sure why this was happening. You know what I mean? Like, because all of them were older than him. But like, to get your teeth kicked out feels pretty traumatic. Like, I have nightmares about my teeth falling out, let alone being kicked out of my face.
Just the idea of being held down is enough.
Ugh.
Like being physically restrained is already like terribly, terribly traumatic. And then just the added step of that was just it reminded me in a way when we were reading Viola Davis's book. And that was like her
Yes.
inciting incident as well, like
Yes.
being
Harassed.
horribly like physically assaulted, just coming home from school, like not bothering anybody.
It's
Like
crazy.
it was nuts. But it was a big theme of the book too, his family protecting him.
I loved it. I
Yeah.
really love that. I thought that, like, so that idea, if we can just jump right into that fact, I kind of felt like traditionally, I feel like when you're taking in stories about people who, I'll just say queer, because I don't want to say the whole, all of, respectfully,
Mhm.
the whole thing every time, because I'll probably just mess it up. So just to reduce my own embarrassment, but not to be disrespectful. But I think queer folks, like when you hear about stories, even if you think about like Pose, I don't know if you listeners watch Pose, fantastic show. Please check it out if you have not. But, some of these stories are really, really sad when it comes to the family dynamic, because obviously, not everybody's family is super accepting. And I don't feel like he had that issue. Did you notice that? Like, was that something you were
Yeah,
like,
I well, when he addressed his nanny and the fact that she was sort of the forefront of that, like the way she taught her kids that this isn't because what a lot of people are taught is that there's something horribly wrong with you if you're queer or if you deviate from any kind of heterosexual norms. And once again, like we talk about a lot on the show, I think that stems a lot from racism, but we don't have to go that particular, but he does touch on a lot of anti-blackness in the book too, so it's not even unrelated to the book. But the fact that the matriarch of their family was very loving and accepting and realized that the queer children in the family were going to need that extra support. Like she even recognized with him that he was becoming isolated and started making sure he had more interactions and making sure he was still a part of the community because she knew that he was vulnerable.
yeah. I mean, and I don't know, like, that's just particularly heartbreaking to me.
Yeah,
I
it's
just,
sad.
I
Sad,
can't, it is,
sad.
I just can't imagine, like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine not loving my son or my daughter for being a queer person. Like, I can't imagine that being the reason why I decide they're not worthy of their lives, you know what I mean? Or
And I mean,
even
that's
my
just like
protection.
Gerard,
I
man.
know,
Like,
it's,
just to be like, I just feel like because of this, obscure passage in Numbers, I'm gonna have to,
oh my
like
God.
maybe keep you out of my life, even though you're one of the best things about my life. And it's tragic. So as much as we hear those stories, because it's funny you brought up Pose, because so much of this stuff reminded me of Pose, but the fact that he was telling the story from someone who had a lot of familial support, like, that was actually beautiful and important to see, like,
Yes.
nothing horrible happens if you just love and support a queer person in your family, like.
I mean, might even succeed on a really high level. I mean, like, I'm just saying.
Like, honestly, what is the fear of treating this person, like, as your child? Like, because I remember like, you hear these stories all the time about people who kick their gay kids out, and it's like, that is so weird. Like, people just I
It's
don't
so,
know,
so
man. It's
weird,
like,
you know
"You're
what I
doing
mean?
sex wrong, I'm angry." It's like
Right. Like, what the fuck? And, I told my kids the only thing I kick them out for is, like, smoking crack.
not again.
Crack! Oh, man.
Crack.
Not
Seriously,
crack.
addiction issues, yes,
Yeah,
that's
because
when
I might
because you
have
can make me
to.
sick with that, like, that's the thing too,
Yes.
and you can kinda make everybody else sick with that, so that's a
That's the
different
only thing that might be where I
yeah,
have to
where it's
make you
like,
go
you
because it's like
gotta
you can't yeah, like, that can start affecting my life, but for the most part, I
yeah.
don't know how you being gay is, like, affecting me in a negative way, like,
Well, this is how a lot of those parents see it, like, to
let's
them,
go.
it feels like they people can point to them and be like, "You messed up somehow with your kid
Yes.
because you got a gay one now,
Ugh.
and so you did something, you gave him too many hugs,
See, I told you to
and
beat
now
his
he's
ass.
all gay."
It's like, come
So, like,
on.
yeah, but it doesn't and sometimes people haven't even said this stuff out loud to themselves, like, it's just rattling around in there,
For
and that's why
sure.
therapy is important because when you say stuff out loud, be like, "Oh, that's stupid.
That sounds crazy. Yeah,
I don't
maybe I
even
should
have to
rethink
do
that.
that."
So, so sad. And then I know, like, when he talked about that inciting incident, like being kicked in the teeth, it was interesting that he kind of used that story as a way to describe how he didn't smile. He said he was always
Mhm.
self-conscious about his teeth from that point on. And what's weird to me, like if we can talk about the cover art, we already mentioned how beautiful it is. When I saw him in real life, I'm like, he's an attractive guy. You know what I mean? Like he's very handsome. And he always had like a hang up about how he looked
Oh, yeah.
based on that and how he internalized that and kind of I don't know, it's just weird, just how you see yourself versus how other people see you, and I think that
Sure.
ended up being more of his internal struggle, like, even though he had that familial sort of support from his family and stuff, it still ends up being really hard to grapple with the fact that you're different, and even because on some level, you're being even if your family is telling that they love you, he's actually even had other family members who were queer, transgender, in his family, and so and he saw them be accepted. But he still felt like he couldn't say it, and so, like, to me, that kinda speaks to, how much our society and our environment gets internalized without you even explicitly saying that to your kids, like, you can tell them, "It doesn't matter, you can talk to me about this," and there's still part of them that might feel like, "Man, I don't know." Like, I still feel like I'm trying to because they're still trying to fit into other social groups outside of their family,
Yeah,
in school
and
and
he
everywhere else.
didn't want that to be his identifier. That was like in Sex Lives
Yeah,
of College Girls, and
yeah,
she was talking about how, like, she doesn't wanna be the gay cousin. You know what I mean? Like, that
yes.
doesn't she doesn't want that to be her identifier,
Mhm.
and, even Dave Sedaris, like, I don't know, he's a writer, and he's a older gay white man from the South, and he was talking about how, without anyone ever explicitly saying it, he knew that being gay is the worst thing he could be
Yo.
as far as, things went, so he just stayed closeted for so long because he knew, like, if he even though he was because he's, even our author kept saying through the book, like, everyone we keep asking him, "Are you gay?" And he would always just lie and say, "No."
Mhm.
But,
No, why do
people
you
are
ask?
asking you because they're just like, "You're giving gay." And
Yeah.
so they're like, "Could you?" Because it's
Ah.
just like I had a friend in high school who came out to me, and I was like, "Dude, I've been knowing you were gay. Like, this isn't, like, a surprise," but I realized it was important for him, so I was just like, "Thank you for sharing that with me," where other than, yeah, I knew from the day I met you, you were a homosexual person. Like,
Right,
it just never mattered to me.
right.
So, but it's important people come out on their own time, but it was funny to me that I think it's that internalized societal message where you're like, "I don't know if I'm ready for this fight."
Yeah,
And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. And also too, when
absolutely.
he said and it's an identify like, when we get into identity, because when he found out his name wasn't really Matthew,
Yeah, that was
and it
his
was
middle
George,
name.
yeah, and but my whole thing
Mhm.
was like, how did you not know that? I always knew, like, my first and middle name, and the fact that he was
Oh.
upset about it, to me, that was weird because I would've been like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'm still the same person. Like, you could
Mm.
call me whatever, but" and I do have a lot of names in
But
these
that's the
streets.
thing, you always knew. I think maybe it's just like, well, why wouldn't have somebody said something to me? Because I mean, people do get into
Yeah.
like, I know there were people in my mom's family who never knew her first name because she literally always went by this nickname to the point they're
Mhm.
like, "Who's that?" So
Oh,
I
my
think
dad's funeral, people found out at my dad's funeral what
yeah,
his real name was.
so I think sometimes, I mean, maybe, you know, you don't even know because nobody's ever said it and you've had no real reason to question it. I don't know if I'd be upset. I'd be like surprised and I would wonder why I was just found. Was he 8 or 9?
Yeah, and why it was a secret, I was waiting for some big, like,
I thought so
bombshell,
too.
and it was
Yeah.
just like, "No, we just ended up going by that name or whatever."
Yeah, it just
What
sounded
was
better.
interesting to me too was, like, he had to start going by his first name once he got to Catholic school because they wouldn't go by his middle name, and I was like, "That's not the experience I had." They had no problem calling me by my middle name.
Yeah, it sound well, maybe his school was way more you
E
know how that can be,
It's
man. Depends
different from
on
place to
who's
pla yeah.
yeah.
He must have gone to he must have gone to Our Lady of Reluctant Integration.
Love
There you
that
go.
school. Great reviews.
Smooth.
Yeah, man. So yeah, that was an interesting thing too. I kind of was waiting for the gag on that one too, but I just was like, I mean, maybe it was just more so the fact that he didn't know and it took him, like I think too, I think that story was sort of what he used to talk about the fact that, you see yourself as Matthew, 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 and then now all of a sudden somebody's saying George, and you're like, who the hell is George? You know what I mean? Like I've been George. And so like just sort of balancing those two titles or whatever that are both supposedly you, but that other one seems kind of foreign. So like, I thought like it was kind of maybe
A metaphor.
yeah, for that, just that in
Mm.
between space of figuring out who you are or whatever. Um but we were talking about how some families don't accept, queer people and stuff like that. What has been your experience in your family? Like, do you feel like it's something that is,
So
like,
I got a North family and a South family.
uh-oh, uh-oh.
South family, no. North family, yeah, they're accepting.
Okay.
But South family, nah.
So when you say not accepting, like, what does that look like though? Like, you
You
can't
don't
come to the
talk like, you can
barbecue?
come around, you just can't talk about it.
Okay.
So you're
You can't
you're
talk
allowed
about
to
it.
come around. It's not like we're gonna exclude you from stuff, but there's always gonna be this, "Well, I love you, but I don't agree with your lifestyle." And it's like, "Bitch, I don't agree with your
Your
lifestyle
lifestyle
either."
either. Thank you. It's like
I
you
believe in paying bills, but, like
I was just getting ready to say, are we having that conversation or what? You know what I mean? You gotta be careful with that. It's
and
like,
see, and
hold
that's
on
why
now.
the spades game always gets loud.
Oh, hell no.
So
See, yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no, but it's so like I have queer family members and I'll say not everybody in the South, like everybody's different, right? But
Sure.
basically um like I won't get into everything, but that's
That's the yeah, I just
the
needed the
broad
quick.
view of it. What about your family?
You know what? I think it's okay. My family's so I mean, I don't know.
I don't think my family would have been like, let's just say I were queer,
Yeah,
like I feel like that would have been an issue
really.
for my South family. Yeah, especially if I brought somebody out, because 'cause I'm the type of person where I'm like, I'm not going to hide myself. So, like, if I can't bring my person around, then I'm not coming around.
Yeah, that's and especially the older you get, I think the less willing you are to suppress who you are, especially in front of your family. It's
Yeah.
like, guess what? Then I'll just stay home. Like this is matter of fact, this
Matter of
feels
fact,
better a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and it's like,
shit, it'd be a
"Oh,
lot,
relaxing on a holiday? What's that
right?
like?"
God, all this passive aggressive bullshit and all this trauma exploding left and right. Don't nobody want to be a part of that shit. No
Like, you don't
way.
like you don't like drinking and screaming?
God, and I mean, it's so what I'll say is this, it's interesting because I don't think I know any family members. Let me think on my dad's side, it's sort of like I don't know a lot of the people on his side like that. Um, so there was only one queer person that I can think of that wasn't directly related to me. I have a half sister and it was like her first cousin.
Okay.
So, and I heard about him being queer, but I don't know how that panned out for him. And then on my mom's side, I really don't know anybody. If they are, they're all closeted and don't talk about it.
Wow.
I think if I was queer, I don't think my mom would care. I don't know, being a girl, maybe my dad wouldn't care, but he had a lot to say about there was an event and so daddy, if you're listening, I'm willing to drag you once more on this one because I said it to you. But it was like a family member's wedding, and he
Yes.
had gay friends that were there who were apparently having a great motherfucking time. They probably were like the life of the party if we're just keeping it trill. And just the fact that they were flamboyant and gave off the gay vibes, like it was very like, like that made him uncomfortable. And I just kind of questioned it. And like some of the terminology that he used, I had to go ahead and be like, yeah, we
Just
don't
let them know.
just don't say that. Like that's not really
Just like we don't
necessary.
say colored
Yeah,
anymore.
it's kinda like that. It's just a little antiquated at this point, and I get it. Like, I get you're from a different time. You're from the early 1900s where I came in
Mm.
the later ones,
Mhm.
and so it's easier for me to make a shift in some of that stuff, because, like, we grew up saying the F word, like, not even as not in reference to your sexuality, but just being like, "Man, he's a,"
Yeah.
or even just being like, you gay," kinda like on the Boondocks, you know
Boondocks,
what I
right.
mean? Like Riley or whatever, but
Right.
even that is like, I don't wanna say that if
Anyone
I'm
uncomfortable. It's
offending
like, yeah,
yeah. So I just had to go ahead and be like, "Yeah, you might wanna rethink that," and I
tighten that
and I
up.
was like, "So were they hitting on you or were they being," you know what I'm saying? Like, what was happening that made you so uncomfortable? "No, I just," "Okay, well, I need you to think about that though for a second." You know what I mean? Like, you're so instantly like, you're feeling something so instantly, like, when it's not even directed toward you, has nothing to do with you. Just them living
Facts.
their lives makes you upset. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's just it's weird to me, it's wild, but it is deeply offensive to some people, and, we had to just kinda leave the conversation right there. I was like, "I just want you to know when you're talking to me, we're not doing that. I don't like doing that. That's not cool. I don't like that."
And I really feel like a lot of that too is also a type of misogyny because it's like, why are you acting so feminine? Because feminine is such a bad thing to be. And so whenever because I think that put that in my notes about how this is all a performance. So
Oh,
you're
all
not
of it.
performing masculinity correctly. And now you have my disapproval. I'm going to give you a thumbs down because
2
you're
thumbs
not
down.
you're not doing man correctly, or for women, it's like you're
You
not
didn't make him a plate?
you didn't well,
Oh,
that part okay, we're skipping
well,
a little, but when he
I'm
was reading his
sorry.
male family members for not just doing like, making their own or, like, clearing your own plates, like, that's too much for you, and I used to always feel kind away because like, that was sort of a expectation I felt growing up that you're supposed to make the plates, you're supposed to make all the food, you're supposed to clean, like, that's just what the women do,
Mhm.
and my whole
F that.
thing was like, I told an ex this, I was like, because I made him a plate and I'm handing it to him, and I was like, "Could you at least say thank you? Because you make a big deal about closing your eyes and praying to God to thank him for the meal." But I'm like, "Why?" Because I made it a point, like, "Why can't you just thank me when I hand you the plate?" And he's like, "Well, every time?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, every time I do it, yes." Like, just that gesture would mean so much instead of
Uh,
just, like, just expecting me to hand you a plate of food and not and just you just take it and that's it. Like, to me, that was crazy. But, that might be why I'm single.
Yo, no, it's not, because it's not too hard to be thankful, and that's why it's funny. Because even when my kids pray, like, I always tell them, like, "Whoever's preparing your food, you should be thankful for whoever that is," you know? So, it's always in the prayer. It's always like, "Thank you, mommy. Thank you, daddy. Thank you," whoever was the person that was helping prepare the food, like,
Yeah,
you have an awareness of the fact that there was somebody who took the time to do this for you, and so what's wrong with a little gratitude? But
gratitude
anyway, if
or awareness
testosterone
of the work, like, if nothing else, like, the fact
exactly.
that that hit a note with me, so thank you, George, for saying that
Yeah.
because more men need to hear it, and they need to hear it from men.
Yes, they sure do, and that was beautiful, and I mean, relationship with his family was really, really beautiful. I really liked the you know, the idea of having that community no matter where you were, you know what I mean? Like, it just felt like it kept him grounded in a way, and so I really liked that, and I think it was one of those things where he had to kinda go away from his family a little bit because, like, when he talked about going off to college and being at a HBCU, he thought like, "Oh, I'm gonna get there and I'm instantly gonna, like, lean into my new identity. I'm not gonna have to hide it." But the first time somebody asked him if he was gay, he's like, "Nah, nah, hell no, no,
It's like, no, why would
not a
you why would you
why
even
would you
ask
say
me that?
that?" Yeah,
I
right,
I only have sex with
right,
women.
right.
Only. Boobs are
Yeah,
the best.
yeah, man. And just well, and it was well, because it is a process, right? Because I mean, I think figuring out who you are just in general outside of your sexuality is also a thing. And so to see him kind of grappling with that, but finally being able to sort of find himself, I would guess, in a way through his sorority family, like he ended up pledging.
Oh,
And I thought
yes.
that was really dope how they kind of he shined a really positive light on that. Um and I guess out of his was it 6 and 6? Oh, not 6 and 6. What am I saying? Were there 8? I think he had 8 line members, and 4 of them ended up being queer, and 4 were
Yeah.
straight
Yeah.
at the end of it, like, he ended up figuring that out, and how he was
And
like,
that
"This."
tracks. Like, that makes sense. Like,
Yes.
that's what you kind of would expect to see,
Mhm.
if we're being honest about human sexuality,
Yeah.
which hurts people's feelings, so we can't be.
No, exactly. But I thought that it was nice because he felt like he got a chance to explore. He felt like being in this group will solidify my masculinity because there was a
Right.
theme throughout the whole book where he was always trying to prove himself in that way. Even in grade school, like he was one of the only boys that didn't really play football. He wanted to double dutch with the girls, which hello, double dutch was my shit.
You were
Okay.
very good. I did
Ah,
not have the coordination, but I
ah.
do have solid memories of you tearing double dutch down.
Double dutch was
Now, I
my
was
shit.
good with one rope. One rope I
Yeah.
could handle, but I was like him, I could never figure the entry
Like, how do I
points.
get up in that bitch in that?
Yeah, like, I think
Yeah.
if, like, they started it slow, like, if I was already standing there and they started it slow it was
Then
fun,
you can
though,
kinda
when he
go.
was talking about Red Hot Chili Peppers. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I
dun, dun, dun,
forgot about
yes!
that."
Oh
That was
my
fun to
gosh.
remember. But
Shout out
once
to
again,
anybody
like,
who
what
used to
I don't
love those
wanna live in
names.
a world where we keep children from playing because it's like, that's you're not performing being a boy right.
I
So
mean,
you don't get to
how is double dutch making you gay? Also, how like, jump rope even? Because I remember every once in a while in our neighborhood, the boys would twirl for us or they would jump in there
Yes.
sometimes, like,
I think they like to watch things jiggle, if
they
I had to
probably
guess.
did, they probably
Why their
did.
motives, it wasn't probably pure altruism,
That's
but
fine. Got them out there
yes,
though, you know what
but
I'm saying?
also too, like playing Barbie, because like,
Yeah.
there was the joke that Kevin Hart and I feel like it was I see both sides of the argument because I don't wanna, like, drag Kevin Hart, but, like, the
Don't.
joke about him smashing the dollhouse on his son's head if he was playing with dolls. You don't remember that? Because that's why he wasn't able to host the Oscars.
Oh.
But he had made that joke a long time ago, and I think he had apologized for it, but I guess they wanted him to apologize again officially before
Oh
offering him
my
the
god.
position, and he told them to go fuck right off because he's already rich.
Yeah, he's
And
like
so but the joke was fucked up because the premise is I'm going to,
physically
he
assault you
I'm
if I.
going to discourage this behavior. Like, that's the
Mhm.
joke, is, like, I'm gonna go through anything to discourage this behavior, but it's like, why? If he wants to play dolls or Barbies and like I said, that doesn't even make you gay. I know a guy who played with Barbies, and I can assure he's very straight. Like,
I mean, my
once
brother would
again
play with me. I used to
uh
make him. He didn't have no choice because I would have whooped his ass because I was masculine presenting, I guess, at that time. Like, I used to be such a tomboy. Like, I loved football. I
Mm,
loved everything
I
because
did not get that version of Moni.
listen, I know you didn't. I don't know what happened slowly over time. I was
I was
socialized
just
into
telling
what
the
this
story
is.
about us watching the Colts win the Super Bowl and just
Didn't
about how,
care.
like, you not even a little.
No, but I still didn't like watching sports. I feel like
Oh,
it's
you just
more
wanna
fun to
do it.
play.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm like
Oh, yeah, that's
football's
true.
fun to play. Like we would do just two-hand touch football in the neighborhood or flag football at school because we couldn't do the tackle. But it was fun to play because I liked running and I liked hitting people. It had two of my favorite things in there.
I
Well,
wish there was
shoot,
more of
just in
that in your
case.
life now.
I know I need to get back to my roots. But I mean, nobody ever discouraged me from, relay races with the boys that I was dusting in our neighborhood or, any of that
But
stuff.
it's
Like I
good
was
you
in
didn't have that
judo.
type of mom, because a lot of
Mm-mm.
moms do that, where it's like, "No,
Yeah.
that's not ladylike, you don't need to." And I got a little bit of that from my mom, but not really. She
Mm-mm.
was like, "Yeah, please go play."
Yo, you have 2
Like
brothers, like, what am I gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, get out there, do that thing, so,
Yeah.
it's just I do think that it's sort of a, yeah, it's just the way I think the bigger deal you make of it, the worse. Like, I just think if you're just kinda like, let them play with what they naturally gravitate toward. Like, if it's one of those things where you're pushing on them or something, I guess that would be weird. But I
Yeah.
think it's weird either way. I think for the most part, kids are just playing. And a lot of times, like dolls and stuff like that, what's wrong with learning how to care for something? Like, I remember feeling distinctly like I was being groomed to be
Mhm.
somebody's fucking mom. I felt that very early on. I was like, this is pretty whack. So wait, so playing for a girl means that I have to
Be
change
responsible.
diapers
It's
and
responsibility
feed a baby
101.
and carry this little hoe around with me? Like, I am bored. Like, why can't I go fly an
I do
airplane or do
remember
something
getting
fun?
immediately like, I always liked having baby dolls, but I would try to do an experiment all day long where I treat it like a real baby and would get immediately I would never make it, like, more than
Yo.
maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Nah, hell nah. I didn't like baby dolls. Like, I didn't
Oh, I did like
want
baby
them
dolls.
like that. I had one. She was cool because she had a, what was a crib, like a
Sure.
rocking it was a cradle, like a wooden rocking cradle, and I used to put my cat in there, and that's when I really liked it a lot. But for the most part, I liked Barbie. Like, she was cool because she had a
Barbie was that
car,
girl,
she had
yeah.
fashion, she had hair, she had, like, more stuff. I'm like, "That's more fun,"
I've
but
decided my theme for Christmas decorations this year is Barbie. It's gonna be a Barbie
oh,
Christmas because to me, that's what
straight up.
Christmas was always about anyway, was
It
getting a new
re
Barbie.
Tell
Those
me
were the
about
best
it.
Christmases. So
They
now
were.
I'm just gonna bring that feeling back, and it's just gonna
Yes.
be Barbie Christmas. Isn't
Oh
that
my
fun?
god. I can't
Yay.
wait. I'm so excited.
It's
This
gonna
is
be a Barbie
so
Christmas, y'all,
much
but
fun.
also a Black-owned Christmas. I'm gonna try to
A black-owned Barbie
I'm
Christmas?
trying to s
How do you do that? It's
I
Mattel
don't
black-owned?
know. There's gotta be somebody at Mattel.
Oh my god.
Um
I'm sure there is. Okay, so
Oh, but here's the other thing, like, I do remember from childhood about discouraging homosexuality just outright, because I went to an all-black, daycare in
hmm,
kindergarten, and I remember, like, 2 boys got caught kissing, and it was a big deal, like, I remember, like,
scandalous.
all of our teachers freaked out, and like I said, this was back when you were allowed to hit kids, so I remember them getting beat for that, and yeah, I remember
Whoa,
just yeah.
got beat.
Yeah. I was like, "Ooh, I don't think they handled that correctly, because it's like,
Wow.
you definitely don't want the kids making out, like, in kindergarten,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
just in general, but, like, the problem was definitely I remember the problem was that they were both boys. Because
Yowza.
I do remember listen, because we talk about human sexuality, it starts early. Because I
Yeah.
do remember even in that time period, a boy trying to kiss me, and I didn't like it. He I didn't find him attractive,
Ah.
and
I mean,
it
it's still
it
kinda gross. I mean,
it
if you really
felt
think about
aggressive.
it.
Well, and there was no consent. He was just, going for it, and I ended up hitting him.
Well, and then see, maybe if he had played Barbies a little bit more, he would have learned because what you'll notice when you watch kids playing with dolls and Barbies and stuff like that, a lot of times they're sort of working out interpersonal communication issues and what not to
Sure.
do and what to do. So sometimes, like if I'm playing with, my daughter or whatever, and she's like being whatever, let's just say there's some aggression happening. You know what I
Difficult.
mean? Yeah, my dog's like, "Yeah, I'm over here with it." Like, I don't like that. That's not fun to me. I don't wanna do that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's so
it's just
true.
trying to present
Oh,
another
Barbie was
it's
so about coping.
yo, you're working through
Yeah,
your shit though, and I
you
think that, like, if
are.
boys maybe got a chance to do that sometime and they come in there all, whatever, you could be like, "Actually, this I don't like this," you know?
Mhm. We're gonna address this,
People
and it's not as attacky because 'cause I'm just talking to your
no, it's
Barbie.
a puppet,
Yeah, it's like
basically.
a
It's
pu
like a
and
puppet
I
show.
love puppets.
You know what I mean?
Listen,
Like, you
I
get the job
really
done.
and see, I wish I had had that. You know, they used to do, like, the puppet therapy, like, for kids and
That
stuff,
always
like,
seemed
'cause it's
weird,
easier
but
to I think I established earlier, I feel weird,
yeah.
so it tracks,
I
but
think I would have looked at somebody like, "Ah, did you
I would have
just pull out the
so
puppet?"
been just like, "Let me tell you about this Kermit. Like, man, you should know how these people, they just been dogging me, man."
It would have had to have been I never saw the real person doing the puppet, like, it would have to be
I
like you walk
can
into a room and the people were, like, behind the curtain performing it, like, if I
It
knew
is
this
weird when you see the puppeteers,
yeah, like,
like,
I'm
behind the
not
scenes,
like,
it's
on
very
What
strange.
About Bob? Remember the puppets for his family? Do you remember that show, you guys? I might have to find that clip and put
That
it
was
in the
so weird. Were they
notes.
marionettes?
They
or
might
were
have
they
been. They were
puppets?
creepy. I wanna say they were puppets, but maybe no, they might have
Oh,
been marionettes. Either way,
I
it's
can't
weird.
remember.
They were
But
ugly.
no, we'd have to have that little partition where I'm just seeing the top of the puppet and I'm just talking to it, and
'Cause I'd have been like, "This is stupid." Like,
they
I
have
know it's
they have
you.
colorful, and
Like,
they have big eyes, and he's changing his voice, so it's different. I think I would have been very they would have worked for me.
okay, different folks. That's what we talk about here,
Yeah.
It's to each his own.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, I actually though had some, because we usually gush over the book, but I actually had some criticisms.
oh, well, let's talk.
If you're ready to move on from puppets.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yes.
Okay.
Next. Next.
Oh, he kinda used irony incorrectly, because he was
Oh.
talking about his one of the early experiences he had with a boy, and he was like, "Yeah, me and another boy, like, under the moonlight, and everything was blue." It's kind of ironic, and I was like, "No, that's
But
not ironic.
technically, irony
That's
is opposites,
apropos."
right?
Yeah, irony is opposite. So just a note, because I noticed with that generation that happens a lot, like, irony gets misused a lot. Words mean things, and that's not what irony means.
So, do you think that's Alanis Morissette's fault?
Mostly, yes.
Okay.
Just like
It's
I
like,
think just like I think
"Praying."
vaccine hesitancy is Jenny McCarthy's fault. Like, not
Ah,
totally, but a little bit.
okay.
And, also too, he credited, the song "Strange Fruit" to Nina Simone, whereas that was actually originally sung by Billie Holiday.
Ooh.
And, yeah, it was
Okay,
like
a
a
little fact
30-year
checking.
difference. So, like, and
Okay.
I think that's just, again, too, from being young, like, how's he
Yeah,
supposed to remember the 1930s?
that's true. Bless his heart.
And actually though, when I was fact checking that, I did learn something about that song. Like, I didn't know who wrote it. I had always assumed Billie Holiday wrote it, but she
Who wrote
didn't.
it?
It was actually, I'm gonna read the whole little thing.
Good.
"Strange Fruit" is a song written and composed by Lewis Allen and was recorded by Billie Holiday in 1939. The lyrics were drawn from a poem by Abel Meeropol, published in 1937. The song protests the lynching of Black Americans, with lyrics that compare the victims to the fruit of trees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that, to me, that was just something that was boring but important,
Okay.
and I think
Ah,
those were my only, criticisms of the book, because other than that, I loved it.
yeah, I didn't catch either of those things, so good catch, friend. I like that he sorta tackled the fact that, him going to like, the code switching thing, so, like, the fact of going to, like, an all-white school versus all-black schools and how you're taught, and again, this kinda goes back to, like, the whole banned book thing, and how especially even now, like, in a lot of these schools, I mean, where books are being challenged, I mean, these are places where there's already a lack of diversity mostly, and
Yeah.
it's because they really truly want to cut out any narrative that doesn't any counter narratives to whatever the American myth that's taught in schools, and I think that that ends up being important, um, to their mission in a way because it's like, if you get a new generation of kids indoctrinated into, America's perfect. You can't say anything bad about our, founding fathers. Everything was perfect. There was
No
never
one's
any
gay
problems.
ever.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
and
If you
definitely none of the founding fathers were gay.
No, no, or on slaves or anything. It
No,
was a work release program.
no.
Like it was above board
Like,
times.
people are gay. If you study history for real, there's a ton of gay people because people are gay.
But they're
Lots of
repressing it so hard because I think a lot of it has to do just being socialized as a Christian too, because that's a very
Ooh, yeah.
Christian, um, colonial sort of like, damn, that's
Mythos.
it. Thank you. Listen,
It's
that's
definitely
not the word
because
I was gonna say, but yes,
I'm
mythos.
glad that you brought up the American myth though, because I put in the minority myth.
Okay.
Because if you take these voices away and take them out of view, you can maintain that myth that we don't have to learn about them because there's so few of them. It's a minority. Like, so there's no time to learn about them. Like, there's too little of them. Whereas it's like, no, actually there's a healthy amount. And even if
Ah,
and even if it were a true minority, it's still worth learning about, like, quite honestly,
absolutely.
like, but that is an excuse a lot of times why, I've thought about this lately about how segregated our society still is, and the reason why so many people are fine with it, and at least people we consider white are fine with it and don't even look to diversify more, because they don't really think there's that many people of color. They've been told they're a minority their whole life. If you watch shows like
Wow.
that have been whitewashed and like all you watch is white programming. I think I was in visiting a cousin, and we were staying in an Airbnb, and the people who owned it, I just assumed they must be white because it was already logged into their Netflix, and I was struck by how it was just all white shows. And to me, that was so weird because it's like, it's not like my Netflix is all black shows. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's a lot of different types of stuff. And I'm like, wow, for these people, their life is probably entirely white and they don't see any problem with that.
Yeah,
And
I
their
agree.
world is, and they can just keep telling themselves, it's like, well, those are minorities. That's why I don't see them very much. There's not that many of them.
Mhm. Well, and also too, I mean, I think you're less likely to wanna take in those narratives or you feel attacked by them because they're so in stark contrast to what you
The
have
hero.
experienced, right, like, it
Yeah.
these
You're
things
not the hero.
and it's like, I'm like, this story like, that's the thing about the banned books that blow my mind, like, you're trying to tell somebody that their story of their life and lived experience is like, it's kind of a bummer, like, we just
It's
wanna
It's like
little
that didn't happen like that. When I
yeah,
would heard, like, I was
mhm.
listening to an NPR piece about banned books, and one of the women who were trying to get, a book about a black kid, his experience in an all-white school taken out. She's like, "So I'm supposed to believe that everyone confused him with the other black kid, and he really went through all this?" It's like, "Girl, yeah, like, why is that so hard to believe?" Like,
Right,
that's
that happens all the time.
the worst thing that happened to him. Like,
Right.
that yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
man.
back to what you said about, like, sort of this, the myth, like, of kinda like the purity
American.
myth that's really
Yeah.
popular within Christianity, or because that was actually one of my other criticisms. I found my other notes, was that he used the term virginity a lot, which is a term I kind just is just me personally, I take umbrage with because virginity is kind of a myth. Like, there's
Do
a really
tell.
well, because so the way we think of virginity mostly, at least in our culture and in a lot of others, is that's when a man penetrates a woman for the first time. And for a lot of cultures still they expect to see the blood from the hymen, and that's the
Ew.
virginity test. But of course, we know now because of like science and like realness, like that's not true. Like you can have your hymen break way before you're ever penetrated. You can have sex several times and then your hymen breaks. Like and also too, there's like, would
So
you consider
gross.
someone who's had anal and oral sex? Are they still a virgin?
Not to
Like,
me.
well, but some people would
Yeah.
say because her hymen is intact, she's still a virgin. So there's all these moving parts. So ultimately, it's a bit of a myth, especially if you subscribe to like you would have to just subscribe to a heteronormative version of sex. So he
What
talks
sex
about the
is.
multiple times he lost his virginity, but that's because virginity isn't really that like, of course, there's the first time you have sex, but that could be any type of sex. So,
Mm.
was it that first time, like, I mean, we're moving now into, like I'm gonna move a little bit into wait, are you ready to go there yet with his uncle?
Yeah.
Okay. So, there was a sexual he had or not his was his cousin? I can't remember if it was
It
a
was a
cousin or his
family member, a
uncle.
male
It was
family member. I
a
don't have
male
it
an
anymore.
older male family member who, kind of introduced, like, mutual masturbation and oral sex. So was that him losing his virginity? Because he doesn't really note that as him losing his virginity. For him, it was when he consciously made the decision to have sex.
Right.
So, like,
Mm.
to me, it's just worth bringing up because we just
Mm.
automatically just assume virginity is this or that. But for people, it has multiple different definitions, mostly because it's kind of a nebulous concept ultimately. But there's someone who actually did the academic work
Mm.
on it, and her name's Jessica Valenti, and it's called The Purity Myth: How America's Obsession with Virginity is Hurting Young Women. But I would also say, too, anything when we hurt ourselves, like when we
Mm.
hurt girls, we hurt everybody.
It's true. You should send that to me. I can add that to the show notes for this one. If
Sure.
you guys are interested in, reading up on that one, but that's it. That's an interesting take, I guess. You know what I mean? Because I agree that when we think about virginity, we're thinking about, penises inside of vaginas.
Yeah.
And that's a workaround too, though, I think, for a lot of sexual contact, in a lot of different cultures. It's like, well, as long as you don't, stick it in her vagina, like it's cool.
Yeah,
Like
it
you can
can't
do
lead to
everything else.
pregnancy. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that's an interesting take there. Yeah, and that's really sad though, because I do feel like that's a thing too, where like your first sexual sort of interaction with somebody is somebody who's older than you. Sometimes they are part of your family or family adjacent. And
Yeah.
like, how fucked up that is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is that something, like, you bring to your kids' attention? Like, "Hey, so."
I my kids are constant like, we have a whole thing about situational awareness and, basically, like, you constantly have to be on the, guard of not getting sexually assaulted. So, for my son, it wasn't as much of an issue. He's just always been so, like no one's ever really tried him. He hasn't had, like he's just always been a larger guy, and
Mhm.
so, like, when it comes, to like, bullying and stuff like that, like, he's not really like, that's not someone because a lot of times too, the sexual assault is about power and control, like, it's a similar sort of thing. It's not always just about sex, it's about, like, I'm dominating this person,
Sure, yeah.
and so it's not as much, but yeah, with my daughter, like, yeah, every situation you have to be or, like, I'll be like, "Wait, who's gonna be there?" Or, "When are you" Yeah, it's a lot of aware it's pretty much my full-time job.
Right, just keeping that from happening,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah, same. I mean, I'm very candid with my kids about, the fact that there are grown-ups who are, literal and actual monsters, forget what you see on TV and how it's portrayed to you. More than likely, it's gonna it would be somebody in your space,
Mhm.
even if it's not family. That's not to say you can't trust family, but understand that that doesn't make you
Yeah.
exempt from inappropriate kinda situations
Yeah, emotional sexual assaults are from people you already know,
that
not
you
someone
already
jumping out the
know.
bushes.
Nope. You know what I'm saying? So, just be aware of, that that's a thing that could actually happen.
Yeah.
Um
And the fact too that sexual assaulters often don't tell themselves like, "Hey, I'm a sex predator." They're like,
Mm.
I'm actually helping him because, this is another gay adult in the family and I'm gonna, you know, I think from just my limited, like, research, it seems like people who engage in this behaviors justify it to themselves in some way of like, "Well, they were old enough," or, it was
Mhm.
just hand stuff," or whatever they have to
Right, I
tell
didn't take his
themselves.
virginity, like, kinda to your point, like, you're feeling like, "Well, I didn't
Yeah.
actually, because if I would have actually done that, then that means this," and it kinda gets you on the
Right.
outskirts and stuff, so that can be dangerous when we're not talking about it for what it really is because, I mean, I know especially too with men, when you're talking about it being like an older woman who maybe has more experience or, in a dominant situation, whether it's a teacher, you hear about the teachers things, or even just your cousins, whoever, you know what I'm saying? Some
Mhm.
older woman putting herself in a position
Miss
that's
Pat
just
had a
super
really good episode
inappropriate.
about that.
Did she? About
Yeah, about her son kinda being seduced by, like, this like, he's 16 and this 30-year-old woman who works at the mall is, like, sending him nudes,
like, come
and it's like,
on. And it's always like,
"Lady, take
yeah,
it
man,
easy."
come on.
Like,
And
"You gotta
listen,
get it together."
on site though, I'm trying to whip her ass. Do you hear me?
Right, and then but
On
her, she's
site.
just like, "Whatever he wants," but it's like, "No, that's not right." Like, there's too much of a disparity there, like, this isn't gonna
If
be
it's
equal,
not
this
right
isn't
on
gonna
the
be
other side, it's not right like that, and I think as a 30-year-old
Yeah.
woman, if you can't say to yourself that this is grooming, you know what I'm saying? You're grooming this child or
Mhm.
just straight up, um, molestation, man, like that's just what that is to me. I mean, I know some men would disagree with me on that because, of course, they're like, "Man, shoot, I wish 30-year-old would've came through," you know what I'm saying? I bet you do. But also, no,
Mm,
like, wait the 2
no.
years. If he's just that delicious, you can wait until it's a legal situation,
Also, too, like,
which is still kinda gross.
really, like, have you seen? Because oh,
You
whatever.
have
To me,
my thing
that's so not
is
sexy.
it's not. I was gonna say and listen, the kinda 30-year-old, like, I'm just thinking there's something going on with that person. Like, when you're
Sure.
dealing with people that much younger, you ain't got all your marbles as far as I'm
I would
concerned, like, something ain't right.
Yeah, that would just be deeply uncomfortable. It's like the idea that he's supposed to be the most fascinating 16-year-old in the world,
Like,
I
you must
guess.
function your level of, like, you or so one, you have to either be well, not have to be, but my guess is, like, either you're socially inept, like, you don't connect with adults your age because maybe you're not quite there, you know what I'm saying? So it's
Mhm.
easier to connect with somebody younger because you feel like, "Okay, I can talk to this person because 'cause they're more on my level." That's what I'm thinking because I don't know how let one of my friends when I was 30 show up with a 16-year-old or even tell me or discuss some shit like that. That
That
would be
would
weird as hell, man, like,
It
I don't
would, and be like, "Let's never hang out."
like, I'm sorry, like, I can't do this, that's nasty, I got friends with kids that age? Like,
Yeah, it's like, "Nigga, I
no,
got
maybe
kids. I
not,
can't
but
let them
yeah,
see this kinda stuff." It's like, come on
it's not
now, get
cool.
it
Not
together."
cool,
So,
man.
yeah, that but I like the fact that he did share that part of his story and his reasoning, but because he did, that's why a lot of people wanted to ban it. They're like, "This is porn." And I was like, "Hold on." Like, first off, none of this was sexy. Like,
No.
it's literally just describing what happened because that's how sex works. It wasn't like,
Mm.
and then he slowly rubbed his hand up my back and I was gasping for breath. No, it
Right. It
was just
wasn't a
like,
scene in a P Valley or anything. It was definitely
no,
not that, yeah.
no, it was
It was not
it
that
was
hot.
not giving fill me up. It
Mm-mm.
was
Ew.
giving it was way
Ah.
more just like, hey, this is kind of what you can expect from
Yeah,
sex, maybe,
this moment.
especially because he said too, even in the lackluster sex education he got in New Jersey, like he was like, they still never talked about gay sex.
That's they don't
And
yeah, that was interesting too, because he
yeah,
was like, I mean, you don't I mean, am I on top or bottom? Like, if you don't know the vernacular, if you don't know the culture of, like, sex and how it's not again, it's not we're not talking about heteronormative sex. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could go down, so you do wanna be clear about, like, "Okay, how am I showing up to this
yeah, I
situation? What's
like how you
expected
said
of
it was
me?
like, where you gonna be at?
Where you gonna be at?" Yeah, where you gonna be? Like, so
Yeah,
that's important to know.
it was. So I thought that he did I think this book was really good, and it wouldn't be
I
something where
enjoyed
I'm
it
like,
too.
keep it away from the children. It's like,
No.
no, if your child is pretty much old enough to read a book that's up at this reading level, they can handle it.
Yeah, because I think
Um,
he says it pretty clearly that it's for young adults, like, it's a young adult memoir. It's for the
yeah,
kids like himself who don't have that family, who don't have have the opportunity to be in front of people like yourself. It's like a point of reference. It's like the book that he wished he came across when he was coming of age, and I think that that is really important for people to be able to see themselves represented in different books and, kinda like, Judy Blume books for a lot of young women. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, about periods and divorce, and there's a lot of stuff that can be hard to talk about, but when you're putting it in a story
Yeah,
in the context of
sure
somebody's
am.
life and experiences, I think that it makes it nice to be able to explore those themes. So, my kids are too young to read this, but I wouldn't have any issue with my kids reading this book when they got to a certain age,
Yeah.
because again, I'm pretty open with my kids. We do have conversations about sex, and I mentioned menstruating earlier today. We were watching Turning Red,
Oh,
again, so we were
it's
kind of
so
talking
good.
about it, and they were like, "Oh my god," yeah, that's what's happening here. That's what
Yeah.
they're talking about.
That's how we all got
That's how
here.
we got. Thank you. I mean,
It's how we
like,
all got here.
it
It's
is
not
literally how we got here, you
shameful. It's
guys.
not dirty. Once again,
It's
unless you
not.
don't I like that more things are like this, and I'm glad they banned it because if they hadn't, we might not have even heard about it. So
Thank
there you
you.
go.
Thank you. And to your point, it's a terrible strategy because all you do is just bring attention to some shit that, you're saying you don't want people to have access to. So I'm sure all the authors thank you because George's book is like best selling at this point. You know what
Yes,
I
and
mean? Like,
deserves
let's
to
get it.
be.
And deserves to be.
I
It was
mean, I know
very
I have
well
my little
written.
criticism, but I think I
I
would
mean,
give this I'm gonna give it a 4.5. This is my first fraction. I'm gonna
oh,
give it a 4.5. Oh, what was a big theme in the book? I used to try to correlate it. Um, I don't
getting
know.
rid of white supremacy as far as like the indoctrination and that was a big
But
theme,
how
I
do you
felt
do
like.
that in units?
Um Oh, that's true. I don't know how to put that in a unit. We should come up with one, that'd be fun.
We do. I guess I'll just say flowers since there was such a beautiful floral motif on the cover of the book. So I'll give it 4.5 flowers out of 5.
That's
And I
nice.
would recommend it for young adults and old adults too who might still be struggling with this because I had to
Mhm.
re-educate myself on this. This wasn't the education I was given growing up.
Facts.
Like I had to learn about this because yeah, my whole education was like sit on it and wash it.
Yeah, okay. Wow.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing anything else with it until you get married, and then that man will tell you what to do with it.
Wowzer. Oh, god.
Sorry.
Oh, the worst. My God. I can't
Yeah,
say
so I
mine
was
was
like I
that,
was
but
like, "I think I might need some more information."
yeah, my mom gave me books and stuff, and so it
Oh,
was kinda
yeah.
like, she even mentioned, like, "Yeah, you can masturbate." I was like, "Mom,
Oh god, no,
please
that would
don't
have
say that to
been
me." I don't
that makes baby Jesus cry.
Oh, gosh. Listen here. I'm just wor I can't. I can't.
I was
But
definitely, like, very that's just like you're bringing shame to your ancestors.
oh my goodness. They
Like,
shouldn't
it
be
was
watching anyway, low key,
I know,
but
it's like,
that's
chill
kinda weird if
out
you
for
think
this
about it.
part.
You know what I mean? Like, go away
You guys
or
like, you're weird.
yeah, that's
Like
actually if you think about it, I don't think I'm the weird one in this scenario. I was actually gonna rate the book the same with the, flower crowns. I'd give
Okay.
it yeah, I was gonna give it, Imma give it I'm like, I don't know, it was I loved it.
You're
I'm
allowed to
giving it
love
5.
books.
Yeah, I'm giving it 5. I
Yeah,
really liked it, and
nailed
I
it.
agree that it does, I've had to re-educate myself too, so I'm always again, like, I like to learn about, groups that are not necessarily in the forefront of my social, experience,
Yeah, people are fascinating.
people are absolutely fascinating. Everybody deserves, to have their stories told. I love that he reiterated that at the end of his sort of, author's note that everybody's story is important and deserves to be heard, including, his. So kudos to you, George M. Johnson, for this fantastic book. And yeah, man, it was good. It was good stuff. I liked it a lot. So I think this is probably a good time to take a quick break. Are you cool with that?
I'm
Or do
so cool
you
with that.
Okay, you guys, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back. I think let's just jump into the Stranger Than Fiction story. Do you have the Stranger Than Fiction story, friend, that you
I
wanted to share?
do have the stranger than fiction story.
Okay, I'm gonna cue the music.
Okay, so this week's Stranger Than Fiction is going to be about the Jeffrey Dahmer story. So, one of
Oh
the things we
God.
really love to do here on the Fake Ass Book Club is save you time. So, not everybody has time to sit down and binge watch the latest Netflix, whatever. And also, some people just don't feel like it. I don't feel like spending a couple hours watching this very creepy, evil man do creepy, evil things. Like, this too much to put in my spirit. And I lived through the 1900s when this really happened. So I'm just gonna give everybody a quick breakdown on what happened with Jeffrey Dahmer, aka the Milwaukee Cannibal.
Hmm.
So yeah, this dude started killing people in the 80s, the 1980s, and then took a little break and started again in the 70s. And man,
Wait, he went back in time?
wait, what? In the 70s? He started, oh, I'm sorry.
It's not even late.
I know. I have no excuse. Yeah, I feel like he killed the first person in the 80s and then started killing more people in the 90s. Because
Okay.
actually, maybe it might even, let me check my notes. It might have started in the 70s and then the 80s. That actually might have been it, like 78, because I feel like it was actually before I was born.
Oh, okay.
And like he took a little break and then came back to it in the 80s and then like started going ham because he got the hang of it and stuff like that. And so he had joined the army, but then they kicked him out for drinking too much. And so then he that's when he started getting into killing after he left the army. And so his parents got sick of his stuff. So he sent him to live with his grandmother. And while he was living with her, he started killing people. Like he'd offer men money and to come back with him to his place, and then he would often torture and kill them. And he was like super into having sex with the corpses and like keeping trophies, all this kind of crazy stuff. Then he got obsessed with like creating a zombie boyfriend that could never leave him, that he could totally control. Like this dude has some very serious issues. So eventually his grandmama put him out because she's like, it stinks, you keep bringing men all the time, you got to go. So he moves into like sort of an all black neighborhood, and like the neighbors kind of peep what's going on. And then one day this like young Asian boy is like leaving his house that who had escaped, and these two black men were like, hey, like they called the cops and they were trying to be like, hey, this dude, this is a little boy, I don't care what he's the because Dahmer was saying like, oh, he's 19, this was just a lover's quarrel. And the police were just like, hey, he's a well-spoken white man, we're gonna leave him alone. And even
Oh
though
my
his
god.
because everyone kept saying, like, the smell from his apartment was just awful.
Ew.
You could see why. And so when he finally got taken down, the police ended up coming in because because all of his victims were most of them were black, but they were either black, Latino, or Asian. So just unprotected, like,
Easy.
he knew who he could kill and get away with it for a long time. And so when they finally, Black Duty brought to his place, was able to get free and brought the cops back. And while the cops were there, they saw a lot of his photographs of dismembered bodies, and then looked in the fridge and saw a black man's severed head in there. And Jeffrey, he tried to take off, and they were able to capture him. But to me, the best part of the story was when he was murdered by a black man in prison. And I feel
I
like
did not
that was
know
the
that.
first that was the perfect conclusion to this dude's story. I thought it was perfect, and it sounds like I looked into the, man who killed him. His name was Christopher Scarver, and
Oh
I
my
looked into his
god.
story. It was really, really sad. Like, he had a tough time of it, and it looks like he has mental health issues, but he knew enough that Dahmer needed to go because his thing was, like, he was completely unrepentant about the murders he had committed. He even said prison is the best place for him because if he was out, he would just keep killing.
Like, it's uncontrollable at this point.
Yeah,
Like,
like,
I
it's
have
all he liked to do. He was actually super happy to talk about it once he was caught. So, yeah, that's what's going on. That was stranger than fiction to me because I would never write a story about what? Like,
I
no.
mean, I so
Gross.
my thing is this, I know that true crime is such a popular genre, and we've talked about this too. Um, it's hard for me sometimes, you know what I mean, to get into these stories because I've always been the kind of person where it's like, man, if I know it's true, I don't wanna see it because it makes it even worse to hear about people being like that. Like, I know that crazy people exist, and I also don't like the idea of fetishizing people who've done these really fucked up things and
Yeah.
making them into celebrities. It's a little bit fucked
Yeah.
up for me. Like,
Oh,
I really hate that a lot.
there was actually a really good article. I'll probably put in the notes about the
Send it
family
to me,
members of
yeah.
the victims who are sick of this,
That's
because no one was consulted for the
that's
Netflix project who had actually gone through this
yo.
stuff, and they were like, how much stuff does this guy?" Because they kept saying it was supposed to, Netflix was trying to say they were trying to concentrate on his victims more, but they were like, "Nah, that whole thing was about him." So,
Well, and it's like
um,
you get people sympathizing for him and stuff, like, on social media.
yeah.
Like, these younger folks, like, who you're saying are maybe just now being introduced to this story, like, have
Yeah.
sympathy and stuff for him, and it's kinda like, I mean, again, like, when we're telling these stories in a certain way where we're making it seem like he's a superstar type shit or that it's being made light of, again, like, I'm thinking about the victims' families and stuff like that that have to relive this bullshit, and, when somebody you love gets murdered in the way that he did, and that's somebody's entertainment, like, I just feel like that's I don't know, I have a hard
Double
time with it.
traumatization,
I
like,
just
that's
have a
another.
personally, I don't ugh,
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't
going to
think
see that
that's
shit.
to me, it's not entertaining, I don't love it, it's not to say, like, you shouldn't learn about it, but it shouldn't be the lens of, like, "Ooh, this is so titillating." It's
Yeah.
more
It
like,
says a
"Man, this
lot
is
about
super
our
fucked."
society
And
too,
we need
though.
to really, yeah, like, and the fact too, like, to me, it's a perfect study on sort of white male privilege,
Oh, shit.
because the fact that he was just left alone for so long to do this, like, there's no way, like, you
Yeah, come
listen,
on.
but
Alright, well,
stranger
listen,
than fiction. Gross.
man, okay. Yeah, you know what? Maybe we can continue that on Patreon. That would be a really good,
Yeah.
bonus content, you guys. So if you wanna hear more
I
about
don't
that,
know.
we gotta get back in the studio and talk about that a little bit more, so that we can, dig into it. Also, I'm gonna include this story about, this kid. I think his name was Giovanni Melton. I think he sort of mentioned this beautiful little boy. He was, in Nevada, and I think his dad murdered him. He was, like, 14 years old because he shot him because
Hmm.
he was gay. And, that's just one of many tragic stories like that, you guys. That's also kinda stranger than fiction for me on the back end. But I just wanted to kinda end this conversation that we were having just on a note of just, like, love your kids, man. Like,
Yeah.
just love them, because I mean, honestly, like, being willing to take your child's life because they're not conforming to this performance of masculinity or the way that they have sex. I mean, honestly, you're reducing that person down to one aspect of who they are as a person and not seeing them fully. And so I just encourage you to take in these narratives, not to be indoctrinated in it, but just to give you a different lens. Like when you humanize these stories, I feel like it's harder come from that vantage point. So I'll
Yeah,
I'll leave
and
it.
not necessarily the first thing you learn or the first thing you're taught is not necessarily the right thing.
Yeah, man. So
Sometimes you gotta look a little more, like, there's more to this life.
yeah, man. Guys, so I'm gonna spin the wheel. Spin it! All right,
So
Kat.
we're gonna go back to the 1900s and read Aftermath by LeVar Burton, a show favorite. So, like, yeah, I didn't even know he had written a book, and it's very well reviewed. And so I wanna it's sci-fi, which is my fave. So, yeah, or it's speculative fiction, really. So,
Okay.
or it's speculative, like futurism and stuff like that. So, I'm into it. It's
That
kind
should
of
be
in that vein of
awesome.
the Octavia Butler stuff.
I like it. And you know what's crazy? I didn't even know he had written a book. Like I just came across it in the library app and the Libby app that I was telling you guys about. Check that out if you haven't already to get your, app so you can get your books from the library, audiobooks, the whole nine, access to everything. Yeah, so this should be fun. I haven't read any of his books, and LeVar, you should holler at us. You should come on here and talk to us about our about your book.
Mhm.
You should do that. But um I guess that's it though, right? I mean, like we picked our book, we spin the wheel. Is there anything you want to leave the people with this week, friend? Anything at all?
Your body belongs to you. So
Aha.
just, if you're gay, be gay.
Listen. Who's gonna check you, boo? No.
Like, yeah,
Hopefully
belongs to
nobody.
you.
Like,
Your body belongs to you. So the
yeah,
people who are
man.
trying to get you to don't listen to those people who are trying to control your body. Those aren't the people to listen to.
No, definitely not. And take care of yourself, you guys. Be involved
Yeah.
with the people and things that bring you joy and happiness. And take care of yourselves, guys, and each other. And until next time, we'll see you next time, guys. Bye. Before we go, we must give thanks to Urban Nerd for providing our music, and legal services were handled by Trezanae M. Atkins. If you like what you heard, please feel free to join us every Wednesday for another fake ass book club. Cheers.
Thank you guys for listening. You can check us out at thefabpodcast.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you're listening right now. We want to hear from you. Come put it in our life. Thanks again. And until next time, peace, love, and the Fake Ass Book Club. We out.